A king has no friends. Only followers and foe. A new chapter of my life has begun. As prince, I spent my days drinking, clowning. Now I find myself the king.
Choose your steps wisely, dear brother. They have their own kingdoms behind their eyes.
I need men around me I can trust. You are my friend. I will come with you.
Joel, I was reading that you and David have been really involved in this project, and you contributed very actively to bring it to the screen. Tell us about this process, and why was it, what was about it?
Well, it started off when I had this idea, maybe it was 7 or 8 years ago, to tell the story of Henry V. And it really, it even started longer ago. I did the Shakespeare plays Henry IV, 1 and 2, and Henry V. And I had this idea of making a movie about Henry V in some way, and talked to David about it. And he was excited about the idea too, but to not just do a Shakespeare film, but to kind of talk about that, then look at the real history, and then create our own, also create our own story, in fact, manipulate our own version of things, but to tell, visually a period film, period setting, but to create our own story and our own machinations of that. And that's been a long process. And here we are, about to show the film, so it's quite terrifying, actually.
You had played Hal as a younger man on stage, in fact. But now, obviously, you're playing the mentor, the friend.
Basically means I've gotten older.
Yes. How was the choice of Timothy for Hal?
Well, I played Hal in 98, 99. I was about 26. And Henry became king at a very young age. And so it became very important to us as we were developing the script to go, let's find a very young king. It was going to be also mean a lot to two things. One was the optimism of a person who's young, who thinks they can change the world and they can do things differently. And in this case, change the way he rules to eclipse his own father, who he doesn't appreciate his policy. But then also just the vulnerability of seeing someone so young being in what I call the kind of room of sharks, which is all of his advisors, and watching him grow in power and be almost drunk on power to a certain degree, or to kind of become blind to what's going on. And I think it was a really great choice. It's really interesting to watch someone so young take on a mantle so important.
Now you will be watched over by an altogether different king. France is taunting us. They were my father's enemies, not mine.
The screams of your men shall lull me to sleep at night.
You will not topple this King Henry V of England you so underestimate.
What is it when we go back to do these historical pieces about wars and power, what it is that from historical movies we can, and reading about history, we can bring it to today's world?
Well, I think it's, we can tell a story about what's going on in the government right now in any country, but we may as well just watch that on the news. And I even think Shakespeare at the time, when, you're talking about Shakespeare telling a story of Henry V, or Shakespeare telling a story of Hamlet, it was about telling a story about England at the present time by telling a story about the past, and so we can look at politics and its machinations and its attachment to ego and power through another setting, through a kind of a fantastical world, and yet we can find truth and honesty and resonance in it for us today, I think. And I think there's so much in this movie that speaks to many human things and political things today.
And finally, as you say, then here we are at the Venice Film Festival. What does it feel like? What's this festival for you? How important it is?
Well, you know, I'm not a very fancy person. I feel like the Venice Film Festival feels very kind of, you know, lovely and fancy and sophisticated to me. It just feels like, you know, it's a kind of a magical place. And I remember feeling that it was a very magical place when I first came here. I think I was 15 with my family. And I just kind of was blown away by a city that seemed like it was just drenched in, you know, like drowned in the river, you know, and the canal. So I love history. So, but as far as a festival goes, it's one of those ones that I feel like it's very special and sophisticated, and it felt like the right place to bring a movie like this.